Yeah, so hello everyone. Does anyone have any thoughts about what human-computer interaction might be? You can just shout out or just type in the chat. There's no right or wrong answers. And you guys get points for the raffle. Yeah, so Natalia just said looking up songs on YouTube. Yeah, so anything that, takes an input and you get an output, just really interacting with the interface that you have. For example, YouTube, the search function is really useful. Anything you might want to search up your keywords, you just put it into YouTube and it gives you some results. So yeah, exactly. Shannon said it perfectly. Yeah, it's exactly that. That's pretty self-explanatory. When a human interacts with a computer, anything that involves that interaction that optimizes it, how we, use our technology. And so, yeah, so more formally, human-computer interaction, it's really a multidisciplinary field of studying the focus of design of computer technology, and in particular, the interaction between humans and computers. So essentially, in this field, we want to observe the ways in which humans interact with computers and design technologies, and really let humans interact with computers in both novel ways or optimized or streamlined ways. And so you can take a second to think, like why are some phone apps, been able to dominate our daily lives? Facebook versus Instagram, which one do you prefer? Some functions seem really intuitive to us. For example, swiping to move between pages, or to get something off the screen, or even to delete something, like in this GIF. So really, these design principles have become really intuitive to us, such that we kind of know how to interact with our technology without even really, second guessing ourselves. Yeah, and so this field is really a subfield of the many fields of computer science. Yeah, and so why is this important? It's important because since the early history of computers, there's been a really significant change in the popularity and accessibility of computers. And so our human time has become increasingly important. And so just to give a quick background, computers used to be very hard to access. Historically, they were limited to institutions, researchers, and professional spaces. But over time, there's been a huge shift in accessibility. So now computers are everywhere, used by all humans. It seems like everyone has an Apple Watch on their wrist or a phone in their pocket. I'm sure many of you have iPhones and Androids that you use every day. And we have more access and more choices. So this overall concept of design and the overall feel of our devices has become important, because what we do with our devices and how we spend time with them, is important. And we want to increase our human efficiency. So HCI really aims to optimize this interaction. And so I'll go over some quick applications of HCI. And one of the most common applications of HCI principles is this word or phrase called user interface, and also this phrase called user experience design. And if you can go to the next slide, yeah. So UI design is also known as user interface design, and it refers to the aesthetic design of all visual elements of a digital product's user interface. How the product is represented or presented. So this could be color schemes or fonts, and user experience design is really the process of enhancing our user satisfaction by improving the usability and accessibility of a product, web page, or app. So it's the idea of making apps more efficient, allowing the user to do certain things, increase their productivity. As I mentioned, the search function has become pretty much commonplace in every app that you have. TikTok has a search function, Instagram obviously has a search function. And it's also, involves principles of, reducing user error, increasing engagement. These apps are so addicting, we can't put them down. And that's really because of how streamlined it looks and how easy it is for us to use these apps. The idea of personalization, just all these, things. And so user preferences are highly influenced by product design and usability. And these really dictate, which products we use, and which products, if you were to make an app, which users would be most likely to use your app. And so from a business perspective, or even if you're, just making an app on your own, it's really important that, you cater to whoever's using your app, um, just so that they're more inclined to use it and they, like using it more. So, a big example of this is Apple versus Android. Does anyone have any preferences on, which they think is superior? It's been like an age-old debate. You just go ahead and shout out or, type in the chat, which you prefer. Yeah, I see a lot of apples. Definitely, I'm the same. I used to be an Android fan, but then Apple just was so streamlined and so easy to use. iMessage is so smooth and so fast, and that really incorporates all the ideas of user interface and user experience because it's so visually appealing um, and just easy to use in general. So that's a really big part of the whole app designing process because now Apple dominates the phone market, or at least in the U.S. And another big example of this is Spotify versus Apple Music. I know that one's a little bit more split 50-50. A lot of my friends, prefer one or the other. It's not as dominant as Apple versus Android as I've seen. Does anyone have any preferences? If you listen to music, whether you use Spotify or Apple Music. Yeah, so I see a lot of Spotify and Apple Music. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. I personally like Spotify. You can go to the next slide. Just because I like the dark theme more. And I feel like it's a little bit easier to use or to search things. But I know a lot of people use Apple Music, so yeah. So this really, all these principles of design, preferences. As I mentioned, the color scheme of Spotify I like more, so that really determines who's going to use your app. But even small things like where the volume button is located. For Apple, it's at the bottom. For Spotify, it's not as clearly visible. So things like that are really small things that we don't pay attention to, but can change a lot about how we interact with our apps. And so overall, we want to make designs that make sense and are useful to the user. Because at the end of the day, if no one can use a product, then it's really no good. And designs should do a certain function and have a certain goal in mind. This is a pretty bad example of a door that says pull, but there's no handle to pull it from. Yeah, so it's just a funny example. And after this interview or this introduction that I've shown you guys, to help us get a better idea of how to create and design more usable products, there's various areas of user needs and principles that we should follow to guide our design decisions and how we implement these ideas into our apps. And so without further ado, I'll hand it off to Nandana, who will explain how we do these things in practice and certain design principles you should follow.
Yeah, so thank you, Jeffrey. So there are like 9 usability heuristics that were developed by this guy named Jacob Nielsen. And like these days, they're pretty much like recognized as the 9 foundational principles. But we don't have time for all of them today. So let's examine like the most important ones using this website, which I will send a link for in chat. The actual URL is actually pretty simple. It's just called flux.rep. But the whole idea behind this website is that it is a social media platform, except the design decisions that they made in it are like kind of questionable. So yeah, you can either open this link on your own browser, or you can just like look at my screen and follow along with me. Either way works, but yeah, let's just really quickly log in to flux.rip. I'll sign in with Google because that's the easiest for me. I'll just choose my email. And yeah, it will let me type in my first and last name. And then I'll hit the continue button, except wait, I'm clicking the continue button, but like nothing's happening. So like if anybody's following along, does anybody have any ideas on what else I could try to do to this continue button for it to let me go on? You kind of have to like think outside the box for this one, but like any ideas you have, just like shout them out. Yeah, Angie, let's try swiping to the left. And whoa, looks like it's moving if I like click and hold it. I drag it all the way to the left. And I guess that worked because now it's loading. So while it's doing that, let's talk about why that's kind of problematic if you were to use a design that's like kind of like that. So typically when you see a button on a website, you wouldn't think to slide it, right? Because what you would normally do to buttons is you just press it. That's just what happens with them. And that really illustrates the importance of following established industry standards and making sure our designs are consistent with what people expect. Otherwise, we can really confuse our users, and that's like no good. But yeah, as some of you have noticed, something is up with this loading bar as well, because right now it's going at like 155 and it's like, I don't know what's going on. So we actually have to do something else to this loading bar too before it lets us move on. And it's kind of hint, hint, it's very similar to what we did to the continue bar. So anybody have any ideas? Yeah, I see Lauren and Ashley and everybody say slide it to 100. So let's try that. It's at 200% now. Oh my. So I'll just click it and drag it until it's at 100. And wow, wow, amazing. I have moved through here. But yeah, so that's like, again, a loading bar, like that just kind of like doesn't fit with what we expect. Loading bars are supposed to actually work and like bring you to wherever they need to go, like after 100%. So that's like, it is kind of unsettling, as people have said in chat. But yeah, I've gotten through to this like my dashboard, so that's great. It looks like we've got a bunch of posts here already. So let's see if I can see what they're all about. So looks like there's a see more button on here. Let's click on it. Wow, this post was actually made by me. I said hello to everybody. And you know, I really think I was like spitting facts on this one, right? Like I love this post. So I want to drop a like on it, right? Um, I don't really see a like button anywhere here though. So I guess like I'll click out of it and oh, okay. It looks like there's like some buttons at the bottom that might be like kind of what I want. But like, how am I supposed to know which ones are the likes and dislikes? Because like over here, we could, with these buttons, we could like trust the symbols and be like, okay, maybe the check mark is a like and the X is a dislike. Or we can trust the colors because usually you'd use like green for likes, right? And red for dislikes. So does anybody have any ideas on which is which? Any guesses? Trial and error. Yeah, because it could really go either way on this one. It's like a straight 50-50 split. So yeah. On top of that, does anybody have any guesses on how I can actually like a post? This one is kind of hard. Because like if I click this, nothing happens. Yeah, this one is hard, so it's okay if you have no idea. This one, to drag a like or a dislike to a post, you have to drag the post and bring it to either like one of these symbols. So let's do the trial and error thing and test out these check marks. I'll just put a bunch of them there. I'll click see more. Okay, looks like those were the likes. Well, it looks like some of you disliked it. Wow. Yeah, it's very intuitive, very much. But yeah. So I guess like we should have like trusted the symbols because it turns out that the check mark is the like and the X is the dislike, but that's still confusing because like we really couldn't have known that before we tried it. But yeah, now that I've liked a few posts, let's try making our own post. So I'm gonna click on this what's on your mind thing, and I'm going to type something in. Hello, everybody. I don't really see a post button or anything like that. So any suggestions on what I should do? yeah, you might think I could try hitting enter, but that's like not doing anything. It's just giving me line breaks. Um, as it turns out, on flux.rip, to send a post out, you actually have to click the backspace button, and that will make the post. But that's like actually really problematic, not because like, not only because it kind of like goes against our expectations, but also because like, what if you make a typo in a post? How are you supposed to delete it? Like if you don't have your backspace button, like if I type hello, but I'm like, oh no, um, I don't want these extra letters at the end. I can't click backspace because that'll just post it. And then like I can't delete the post or anything either. So like that is problematic because it kind of like gives our users less freedom as well to like do what they want, because not only can I not like correct my own typos, but I also can't delete my posts. So yeah. The last few things I kind of want to talk on this website refer to a principle called visibility of system status, which states that like a system should give the users relevant information about like generally what's going on with it. And a really good example of this is how like iPhones show you the remaining battery percentage, so you know like exactly when you need to plug it in. On this website, you might have noticed that the cover photos of each post is like a letter. And if you click see more, you can see that that letter corresponds to like the first letter of each post. And that's like, it gives us problems because it doesn't give us much information about what the post is actually about. Like, I'm sure there's better things that we could put on that cover photo that would like give us more of an idea of what the post is like. But other than that, if you click this notifications button, as you can see, the notifications that you get aren't very useful. Like it alerts me of like when I made a new post and also when I click a tab. But like both of those are like kind of, it's information that I don't need. Like, why are you telling me when I'm clicking a tab and when I'm clicking a post? Because typically on social medias, you only really care about like you would want to be notified if someone else like makes a post or something, because obviously you would know when you make your own posts. But yeah, this system, like while it kind of does keep users informed about what's going on, it doesn't really talk about important things. And so the feedback that we're getting is not really appropriate. So let's switch back to the slides now. And here are just a few more like side notes. Flux.rip actually did pretty good for this one in that like the design, if you look at it, it's pretty minimal. It doesn't bombard us with information or anything like that, like this top screenshot does. But yeah, the main point is like, don't put too much information in your designs because you don't want to overwhelm your user. And then other than that, you also want to make sure that users can recover from any errors they might make. Like for example, on a MacBook, if you try to permanently delete items in the trash, then it kind of brings you to the screen where it asks you, are you sure? And that kind of prevents the error of like, oh, what if you clicked it on accident? Or what if you have like an important file on there that you didn't know about or something like that. It kind of helps you like give yourself a moment to be like, oh, do I really want to do this? So yeah, with that, I'll hand it off to Jeffrey, who will tell us a little bit more about accessibility.
Yeah, so Nanda did a great job explaining some core principles of design that you should all follow. But we also thought it was important to add in a little section about accessibility, just because it's a pretty relevant topic, and in um, the past few years, it's becoming an increasingly big issue that we allow our apps to cater to all users. And so while we can think of an average user to base our design off of, it's important to keep in mind that all users are different. So this is essentially the concept of accessibility, which aims to ensure usability for all. And of course, this is by no means a comprehensive list, but just some things that we thought of that were important. So the first key point is visual accessibility. And so color blindness is a pretty big topic. So here are some not so good examples. Can anyone identify what might not be good about the first example on top? Feel free to just type whatever. Yeah, exactly. So, if someone's colorblind, then saying that you should, fill out all of the fields in red, someone might not be able to identify the field in red. So it just makes the app, a little bit more clunky for them to use. So if it might, come down to trial and error, where they're clicking, they're filling out certain fields, and they have to find out kind of which ones are required. And the second choice, the second option or example, yeah, is pretty clear. It might be, cool to have like a cute color theme for your design, but this might not be, clearly visible to someone who is colorblind. And so on the next slide, I have, some better examples. The first, it says phone required this time, so it doesn't say, fill out all fields in red. And the second example, it says submit, edit, and cancel, and three, distinct colors, so that it'd be more easily discriminated by someone who may have trouble seeing. And the second example we have is about contrast sensitivity. So we can take a look at this example. And so, I personally like using pastel, light colors too, because I think it's, cute. It's visually appealing. But, something like this where it says, welcome to Amazon, check out our new items below. It might not be, seen easily by someone who has trouble, seeing different contrasts. So a better example would be, darkening the colors a little bit, so that if we say, welcome to Amazon, check out our new items below, it's much easier to read because the contrast between white and dark is easier. And so it makes it just easier to see the words. And then another example is motor accessibility, and specifically ease of movement. So, a not so good example is, imagine if Instagram, which I, copied the symbols here in this example, if the menu items were, on all four different corners of your phone, some people might have a hard time reaching for buttons on the phone if they're spaced apart. And this isn't limited to any, one population. This may be children, people with disabilities, etc. I have small hands as well, so it might be hard for me to reach up to the top of my phone if I wanted to, search something up or, go to my profile. And a more accessible version would be something like this, which Instagram does do, where, all the apps are on the bottom, or all the options on the bottom. And, you can think outside the box too. Something like this where you have one button that expands out to all four buttons could be a good design choice as well. It's up to you. Yeah, and then so lastly, it's important to talk about auditory accessibility too. So imagine you're making an app like TikTok that presents videos to users. And even though users can submit their own captions, maybe your app could include a function that attempts to transcribe text, speech to text, kind of like YouTube, which may be good for users who want to see videos and whose creators haven't uploaded captions for themselves. And this is quite important because sometimes auditory information is the whole point of the information being presented. If you were to watch this movie clip, for example, without any sound, you wouldn't be able to tell. The whole point of the scene was to show that an airplane was approaching. So in some cases, audio is essential to the information being presented. And then lastly, kind of merging auditory and visual accessibility. Imagine you're building a photo album app like Instagram. How do people who have trouble seeing interact with their friends in the app? So a nice example of this is Instagram, which has an option to include this thing that they called alt texts, which allows the user to write out the text that to the device that describes the pictures. So if I were to look at this picture, it would say something along the lines of, a hiking trail with sunflowers on a beautiful day. And this would, allow someone who isn't able to see to get, a similar experience with Instagram that normal users or other users can have as well. So, you know, a lot of times this isn't innate within the app. So it's just a good idea of a design principle that you can include yourself. And so Nandana will now cover kind of the design process and how you know, take all these ideas and make your own design.
Yes, we'll kind of go through this section a little bit quickly since I do want to give you as much time as possible for our activity at the end. But yeah, generally when you want to design anything and like implement like the everything we've been talking about so far, you would use the design process, which on a top level like kind of looks like this. First, we have our strategy and we perform research, and then we can actually start designing and creating like our actual interfaces. So, design strategy is basically the process by which people examine how design and business can kind of complement each other and make each other better. Like, a really good example of this is how, like, if you kind of think about it, every social media platform is like kind of making their own version of TikTok because they see how like TikTok's like general like format kind of is helps a lot to keep users like really engaged. So yeah, like Instagram Reels. I'm pretty sure Snapchat has its own thing now too, but everybody's trying to get on like the TikTok train. But yeah, other than that, we also have to perform user research, which not only helps us understand the problems we're solving, but also who our users really are and what their needs are. And we do this through crafting personas, use cases, and user stories. So a persona is pretty much a physical or a fictional character that's created to represent a particular type of user that might use a particular product. So when we think about personas, we want to also consider their age, challenges, and motivations, which we'll do right now. So let's say we have a user of Spotify that is 55 years old. Let's call her Angela Jordan. Using the chat or like out loud, what are some challenges she might face, like due to like her age or like any other characteristics about her when using Spotify? You can type it in the chat or say out loud. I'll be typing along with you here. Yeah, vision might be a challenge. Hearing. Yeah, how are you going to use Spotify if you can't hear that well? Any other ideas? Yeah, just general navigation too, because older people might not be like as tech savvy as we are. So that these are all like very valid challenges for us to consider. Now, what are some motivations she might get from like, what are her motivations for using Spotify? Like, what goals does she want to achieve by using Spotify? Yeah, I accidentally started typing in the chat, but she might just want to listen to music. Yeah, adapting to more technology in general, that's great. Especially since she is older, she might want to like get with the times and impress her hip children. Yeah. But yeah, these are all amazing ideas. Let me fix my screen share in just a second. Yeah, now we've like pretty much crafted a pretty good user persona for Angela. And now we can move on to use cases and user stories. So use cases just kind of, they kind of more clearly define her motivations for using Spotify or any other product, but more in terms of like what she can do on the app itself. So for Angela, a use case could be like if she likes podcasts, she might use the liked podcast playlist on Spotify to save her favorite podcasts. And then using all of this information, we can now craft a user story. We can say as a blank, I want to achieve some goal so I can, or I want, so I can like receive some benefit in the end. So yeah, again, we can just really quickly fill this out. So what are some words we can use to describe Angela? Any words at all, like that relate to like her age or anything like that, or if anybody can't think of anything, we can also use her name. But yeah, she might be a grandmother. So we can type as a grandmother, I want to, and then what goal could she want to achieve like as a grandmother? Yeah, listen to music, listen to popular music. And why might she want to listen to popular music? Yeah, relates to her grandchildren. That is amazing. So yeah, as a grandmother, I want to listen to popular music so I can relate to my grandchildren. So yeah, we have crafted a user story for Angela too now. Okay. So yeah, after we have all this information, this is where we would start like compiling all of that and actually sketching out designs. So the kind of sketches we're going to do today actually are going to be low fidelity sketches where you're just kind of like drawing out what the interface will look like without worrying about the details or like colors or anything like that. But in the real world, after low fidelity sketches, you would typically transition to high fidelity sketches, which would then be implemented by engineers in the actual application. So with that, let's transition over to our activity. In just a second, we'll put you in breakout rooms with our volunteers, and we're kind of gonna lead you through the activity on an online whiteboard, which each volunteer will have the link for. And yeah, we'll just kind of, first we'll decide on a social media app to use and kind of go through each of these questions and finally like create a sketch for like one way we can improve whatever app we choose. So with that, I will stop my screen share. Let's see how we can do breakout rooms. All right, welcome back everybody. Before we wrap up, would anybody like to share their design? You don't have to actually show it to us. Ooh, yeah, Ashley, if you want to share, whoever led Ashley's breakout room can like screen share if you want. And Ashley, if you're feeling comfortable, I would invite you to like unmute and like explain your design to us and everything like that. But
Yeah,
yeah.
sure. So on the left is my my Instagram app, and there are two things I really want to change about it, which is on the bottom there used to be like a Instagram Reels and the shopping icon here, but I personally don't use either of them, so I wanted to change it with the app post feature and the heart. I mean, like the likes and comments on the bottom, so that would kind of be more of a quality of life change for me.
Yes, no, I completely agree because right now my number one like gripe I have with Instagram is where the shopping button is. So really great change. But yeah, um, we might have time for one more quick share out. So if anybody is feeling up to it, go ahead. Otherwise, we'll just wrap up. And you don't have to actually show us the design. Like you can also just like type out what you did in chat. That's also like completely fine. But yeah, with that, thank you all so much for coming out to our workshop. You all have been a group of really great students, and I hope you learned something from this workshop. And yeah, thank you so much for coming out to this event as in general. I know the closing ceremony is starting like really, really soon on Socio, so make sure to catch that on the main stage. So yeah, and yes, if you want to, we can take a group pic right now. So if you want to, I would encourage you to turn your cameras on and smile. I will take a few screenshots. Okay, cool. Thank you all so much. And yeah, with that, you're all free to go. Thank you for coming out, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.